The matter presently before the hearing body requires a public hearing. All interested persons in attendance shall be heard on the matter. If you wish to testify on this matter, please fill out the public testimony card and give to the recording secretary. At the appropriate time, when your name is called, please step forward to the microphone, state your name, address, and interest in the matter. For longer presentations, proponents and opponents may buy time from one another. In so doing, those either in favor or opposed may allocate their time to a spokesperson who will represent the entire group. You may be limited by time for your presentation. Generally, the applicant will have a total of 15 minutes to speak. The proponents will be given 5 minutes each. The opponents will be given 5 minutes each. And those thought to be neutral on the matter will be given 5 minutes each. The applicant will then have 10 minutes for a rebuttal. All questions must be directed through the chair. Any evidence to be considered must be submitted to the hearing body for public access and to become a part of the record. All written testimony received both for and against prior to the hearing shall be summarized by staff and presented briefly to the hearing body during the staff report. Testimony and evidence must be directed toward the applicable review criteria contained as indicated in the staff report, the comprehensive plan, or the applicable land use regulations which the person believes to apply to the decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue may preclude appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. Failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to the proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the local government to respond to the issue may preclude an action for damages in circuit court. Everyone present is encouraged to testify, even if it is only to concur with the previous testimony. At this time, I would ask that any member of the hearing body who has a conflict of interest to please indicate the nature and extent of the conflict and whether you intend to participate in or abstain from the hearing the present matter. Okay. Also, if any member of the hearing body has had any ex parte contact with anyone prior to this hearing, including a visit to the site, please declare the nature and extent of such contact at this time. Okay. Does any member of the audience have any questions for any commissioner regarding conflict of interest or ex parte contact? The public hearing will be conducted as follows. First, we'll have the staff report, then questions, if any, by the commission. Then we will open a hearing for public testimony. The applicant will have about 15 minutes. Proponents not more than 5 minutes each. Opponents not more than 5 minutes each. People that are neutral on the matter not more than 5 minutes each. And then rebuttal by the applicant not more than 10 minutes. I will then close public testimony. Any more questions to follow by the commissioners? Discussion and deliberation by us, and no additional testimony unless specifically allowed by the chair. A decision shall be made by the hearing body at the close of the hearing, where the matter will be continued to a date certain in the future. This will be the only notice of that date you will receive. Does anyone have any questions about the procedure outlined for this hearing? Okay. Brian?
Thank you, Chair Savory. Good evening, Commissioners. We have another annexation application. I think I mentioned when our first one back in January came through that Stafford Land Development Company was working on. There was originally a hope that maybe these two applications would be able to go simultaneously. For various reasons that didn't happen, and so we're following up with this one. Some of the heavy lifting in reviewing both of the annexations, one that you previously made a recommendation on, and this one is the development concept plan that involves the entire area of both of these annexations and a few additional properties that are not a part of the annexations. That total development concept plan was about 61 acres in size. And this slide up here shows you the area outlined in red, indicating 2 tax lots. This one here and this one here, both owned by the McMartins, that are proposed for annexation with this particular request. One having some frontage on South Ivy. The other one does not, because these 3 parcels here were part of the previous annexation, if you recall. So all of these are east of Fur Street, while other than these 3 parcels, the previous annexation was over here west of Fur Street. This boundary for the lower parcel is the urban growth boundary, which is defined by our comprehensive plan to be the top of a bluff along the Molalla River. So we received just recently a survey and legal description for this area that is proposed to be annexed. I haven't looked at it that close, but I think it ended up saying there was 31 acres. And I don't recall if that was including the right-of-way or not, but we are annexing this portion of the South Ivy right-of-way that also will be annexed at the same time that these 2 parcels are. Might point out that the upper tax parcel is divided pretty much in half east-west, with the top half to be zoned R2 as it comes into the city limits, which is the same zoning the parcels to the north have, which are still vacant at this time. Then the lower half of this tax parcel would have the R1.5 zone, which is the medium density zone residential zoning district. And then the lower parcel will have the R1 zone low density residential. As you can probably tell by the lower parcel, the entire tax lot and ownership of that actually goes down the slope towards the river. And so indeed, by our action and proposed action tonight to follow the comprehensive plan and respect the urban growth boundary, we will be bringing the northern portion of the lot into the city limits, while the area below the bluff will not be coming into city limits. Therefore, it's going to retain its county zoning, which is exclusive farm use, and the rest of the land that has that same zoning today will be what I just indicated to you. That zoning that's proposed is following the same land use boundary designations that are on our comprehensive plan. So there was no need for any plan amendment, simply a rezoning to accompany the annexation. Here's a copy of the survey map. There was a legal description that preceded that. And this is necessary to give and pass along to the state and to the county assessor's office, et cetera, in the process of annexation, to make sure that we're getting the exact area that's proposed for annexation brought in, so district boundaries can be changed for several entities when you do annexations. So as I said, the heavy lifting has already been done. I say that because the city council on February 7th acted on the previous Stafford land development annexation, and one of the first actions they had to take in order to annex the properties that were in that one was to adopt a overall development concept plan for the area, and they did do that. They approved a plan that had a date on it, which is this one, 2/2/18, down in the bottom quarter. This particular plan did follow and made the changes. I'm not going to list those all right now that the Planning Commission had recommended in their review. One of them was changing this street, D Street, to head up north and not east or west, somewhere in this area where it was ending in an elbow. And so that was removed. It also labeled the end of the Bluff Trail as just saying that it was an area where potential future trail connection could happen, and provided this pathway for those that might use this trail in the future, once it's constructed, to be able to go up along the streets and where the sidewalk will be and get directly over between these, the trail and the pocket parks. That was debated quite a bit at the city council meeting, and they agreed to that. They approved this map with one condition of approval. We're going to add that statement onto this map, and it will eventually have a signature page on the back, and we'll get the council to adopt this master plan so that we can preserve it in our files, so that as other property owners in the area that aren't participating now wish to either sell their property or propose to redevelop it in some manner, they'll have access to this approved and adopted concept plan, so they have some idea what kind of guidance is going to be followed and when they redevelop their particular properties. The statement that the Planning Commission added said exactly that property owners are not bound to the lot size and lines as proposed. And that mainly arose for a couple reasons. There was a concept after the Planning Commission meeting that the Stafford Land Development was contemplating of maybe making these lots along First Street. They're shown right now as 5,000 square foot, but they were contemplating even a concept of 3,000 square foot lots, which is allowed with a conditional use permit to allow detached single-family homes with a common wall on a lot line. And that primary motivation is to give an opportunity for a wide variety of housing types, all in this concept development area, and more affordable because your lots are much smaller, and usually attached homes are somewhat less expensive than single-family attached. So my understanding is they're still contemplating that concept, and we have a pre-application to discuss an actual subdivision application now for that real soon. But there was a change in the street up here as well, and I wanted to point that out to you. It was something we thought about for quite a while as to whether it actually even needed to come back to the Planning Commission. But they did have not only this connection to First Street, but this street up here came through as well. And with this contemplation of the new housing configuration in here, they were able to significantly increase the efficiency of serving the properties in here. And one of the primary reasons they changed the design is at the time they were in front of the Planning Commission, they were not tearing down a house that was right in this area. And then there was agreement reached for that property owner to participate and remove that home. And it made the ability for a much more efficient arrangement of the lots. And they were able to, when I say more efficient, it actually works out well with the circulation pattern, and it also increased the number of lots that were possible in the area, even without doing the common wall single-family homes. And again, along with that approval of the concept plan, they also approved the sanitary sewer master plan for the entire development area, which applies equally to the proposed annexation that we're looking at tonight with the McMartin's parcels. And in this particular area, all of the property that would be developed on the McMartin's properties will need to gravity feed down to a pump station that's located in the right-of-way down here at the southeast corner of the property. That pump station is planned to be built with city funds, primarily through system development charges that have been collected through time in the past. And there's an estimate that if we get started right today, that might take as much as 2 years before we actually see an operational pump station at that location. The applicant has voiced some concern, wanting us to get that moving faster. And the city administrator and the public works director, which we have a new one that's been with us for about 2 weeks, are looking at that to see what it's going to take for them to try to push that along as fast as they can, serve these proposals that are before you right now. A pump station has this accompanied red line here, which is a force main that takes it up to dump into an existing sewer line up near 16th Avenue. And the water line master plan was also approved. Nothing I really wanted to say about that. Then just real quick to remind people, the concept plan that was approved did include reservation of right-of-way area to accommodate a proposed roundabout. And so that was adopted in the proposed concept plan by the city council. Details about its exact configuration and size and basically how it would be paid for, and a recognition that it can't actually be constructed until right away on the east side of Ivy Street is available and made available, and that is not likely to happen until that property over there also wishes to annex and will have to do their own concept plan, and will reserve the right-of-way for that with that concept plan in the future. In the meantime, we anticipate that the city will be redoing and updating our transportation plan. This project that's identified in this concept plan would be added as a capital improvement project to our transportation plan, and that would give it a mechanism of utilizing system development charges that we collect in order to help fund and pay for that project in the future. We would hope that with the future subdivision in the annexed property that fronts on Ivy Street, that the normal half-street widening for Ivy Street, which would be determined by the county since it's still in their jurisdiction, that hopefully that money could be collected and placed in a fund that also could contribute towards the eventual construction of the roundabout, rather than actually making the improvements to the street now. That's what we're thinking, whether that works out, because it is the county's decision in the end, probably their decision of exactly where they'll agree to let the money go, or whether it needs to be improved at the time the subdivision happens. We'll be working on those details as development occurs. I mentioned before at the previous annexation that we feel like this roundabout has been proven over and over to be one of the very best means of calming traffic. And this is a particular important area because it's coming in from a rural environment as people enter the city. And as they get to the bridge, it would be wonderful for them to see the roundabout ahead, realize they've come into an urban environment, they need to slow their speed down, and this will automatically help them do that. It also serves real well in keeping traffic moving in a constant manner. So eventually, with full development of this development concept area, there could be quite a bit of traffic on 17th Avenue, the east-west street connecting, since this is the only connection point to South Ivy. And that would allow people not to have to wait and try to make a left turn to go into town, but to simply flow into the traffic and move around. And that's shown to be helpful too. I mentioned one of the major concerns that have been voiced on South First Street in the middle of the concept development and trying to make the left turns out on Southeast 13th Avenue. Well, here's a way, a built-in solution without a four-way stop, because a four-way stop presents a whole slew of other issues that are of concern. You have a very heavily traveled arterial street intersect by a lower volume street, all equally with four-way stop signs. So I'm going to mention a couple other things just real quick. Did want anyone else that might be listening at home or something, that there was an extensive traffic study that was done associated with the development concept plan. And so it's studying eventual full development of the entire 61 acres. And other than recommending that the roundabout would be a good thing to help facilitate the movement of traffic in the area, and a recognition in the data that the left turns on from First Street onto Southeast 13th would reduce the level of service from A, which is no problem at all, down, I think it was C or D, which is still acceptable. Therefore, they said there's no required mitigation as a result of full development of this concept planning area, that the streets basically are capable of handling within our accepted level of service standards. So they didn't recommend any improvements other than they thought the roundabout was a good idea. See if there was, we did have some written public input. We've included all of that in your packet. It was at the very end of the packet. Of course, we had some input from our city engineer. There's also a letter in here signed for 5 different property owners with some significant concerns that they've voiced in this particular annexation proposal. We've got one from Tom and Julie Rushton, and looks like that's it. Only ones that I'm aware of, I guess, right now. And as far as the review criteria, probably the most important one is, do we need more land to be annexed in the city at this time? And there was quite a study done by Stafford Land Development, and this particular annexation played upon that study that was done. And it was clear from the data, let's see, to summarize, that we had about 333 lots, deficiency 3 years out with our current supply, and if we included all of the current subdivisions that are in process but not yet platted, if they're all successful and are eventually platted in that time frame, that we would still have an 80-lot deficiency. And so that means that we do not have a 3-year land supply 3 years out, because our consumption has easily been 45 lots a year, and in the past 3 years it's been higher than that. So both the previous annexation properties and this property are needed in order for us to come close to having a 3-year supply 3 years out from now. And so it meets that criteria that's written in the annexation ordinance that says a reasonable supply is about 3 years' worth of lots or land available for lots. In the study, it indicated that we have 0 R1.5 lots today available that are vacant. And we have 1 lot that's R2 for multifamily development. And we had, at the time these annexations were started, 46 lots, which I think Laney has checked, and it's down to about 30 now, existing today, right now. So I think they've satisfied that criterion, and there is a need for us, if we wish to keep the potential of housing people that are moving to the community. The population study that was provided by the applicants clearly indicate that Canby's going to continue to grow, if not at the same rate, faster than we have grown in the recent past. And so we need housing of a variety of type, and that's one thing that this particular development concept area does, is it has 4 different zoning districts in it, giving us a variety of different housing types and lot sizes, including what's anticipated to be some senior housing that would be a part of Hope Village, because they certainly have an interest in part of this property as well. So we did recommend that the Planning Commission recommend to the City Council that annexation be approved as proposed, and that upon annexation that we assign the 3 zoning districts as shown by the Southwest Canby Development Concept Plan map, and which is in accordance with our comprehensive plan map. Are there any questions about the application?
Brian, I did have one. When this was before us the last time, we spent quite a bit of time on, there were some issues, opponents of this previously talked about traffic congestion, not at the roundabout area, but another, 13th and Fur, exactly. So has that changed at all, or is that?
It's only changed in that that is a topic that's already been broached at the Traffic Safety Commission. It's something that there's a subcommittee already going to be exploring where in town highest priorities might be for mitigating in some way or other some of the difficult intersections that we're dealing with. There wasn't any condition of approval or anything placed upon by the Planning Commission, and I'm assuming that's mostly because the traffic study said there wasn't any need for actual mitigation that we could assign to the developer. So it's a city issue now as to what and how soon we do something. And I just might remind you again that it's going to be 2 or 3 years before there's any physical change in actual traffic. So we've got time to try to address this, see if it's as high a priority today when we study all the intersections in town, because we still have to keep in mind that there's other locations in town that have similar concerns that were voiced with this particular request as well.
All righty, any further follow-up questions? Okay. We'll move along to the applicant. If you'll state your name and address. Oh, and if you can push the little button in front of you until it turns green. Oh, you had it first, there you go.
Hi, good evening. My name is Tucker Mayberry. I'm the applicant. My residence is 1080 Southwest Riverside Drive, Portland, Oregon, 97219. I wanted to thank you tonight and thank Brian Brown for his staff report. We support that fully. You know, most of the work was really done with the concept development plan that everybody worked on prior to this. And that was the heavy lifting, and we've made changes that were recommended by you guys a month ago, and I think made it better. I think the neighbors are happier than they were, and you'll probably hear from some of them tonight, but we look forward to working with them and doing minor tweaks and changes that when we come with a subdivision application in the future that will address those more fully. But wanted to be here for questions and let you know we totally support this as recommended by the staff, and would like to have a chance to respond to any amendments at the end and hopefully address their concerns.
Okay. Any questions? Thank you very much. Oh, did you have something?
No.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Ed Netter. There you are.
Thank you. My name is Ed Netter. I live at 1847 South First Street, and I also own the property at the end to the west of the McMartin's property, 1960 South First Street. I've met with Mr. Mayberry and feel very positive that my needs will be met with the access road coming off of D Street for my future development of the 1 acre. So I feel positive that it will be taken care of, and the McMartins, you know, should have the opportunity to annex their property and sell it to a developer as it is their property. I have two concerns. It is the South Fir and 13th Avenue Street. I think this is when if both of these properties, the Becks and the McMartins, gets annexed, I think the number was 263 houses going in there. So not only would there be construction traffic with everybody working in there on the subdivision, but just more and more intersection traffic also coming from the east with the other Timber Park subdivision. So just wanted on record that and I think I'm positive at the city council meeting that they're going to be working on it and contacting me about that four-way stop. The one other concern I had was, I believe the Exhibit 3 dated 2/2/18 that we're looking at, the upper two, that came in right before the last meeting. Brian, is that right? That the latest?
This particular map,
Yeah, is it dated 2/2/18?
Mm-hmm.
this map here,
The roadway.
the roadway design, I don't think was shown at all, as I mentioned before, at the Planning Commission meeting. So this map was created, and the lot configuration right in this area was created just prior to the city council meeting, because I requested this particular map as one that would be approved, because there was another map that was submitted by Stafford Land Development that showed 3,000 square foot lots in this area with this street arrangement. So this street arrangement is different than what the Planning Commission actually reviewed at their meeting.
Because I've talked with the Steinke family that's up at the top there. If you go up right
Yeah,
where you,
so aren't they right in this area?
yes, a 2 acre piece. that road is very close to going through their house. So I don't think they're approving this plan that got put on right before the city council meeting. Because they're not, at this point in time, selling to the buyers of the Beck property. So they're here, they may speak, but just to be noted that that roadway went in without taking in their wants or needs.
Well, we'll listen to them if they're here tonight, because they should show up at the city council meeting.
Okay.
Because they haven't approved the written findings yet.
Okay. But as a property owner of two pieces on this street, I like what the Mayberry Group has done and to fit needs of myself and other neighbors on the street. So I approve the subdivision.
Any questions? I do. Ed, the last time you were here with you and Mr. Tom Scott, both were opponents of this project, but basically because of some issues, one of which was around the traffic on 13th and Fur. And I was just curious, as a developer, both of you, when you look at over 200 new homes in the area, what would you say would be the ideal type of traffic calming situation at that point?
On 13th and Fur?
13th and Fur, because that's what you and Tom specifically objected to.
Well, there's not enough property to do a roundabout.
Right. So,
But as I said at the city council meeting, a traffic survey can show you one thing, but what the real effects are could be a lot different. And I invite you guys to come out in the morning. Right now, when I go through that intersection, I am the first car. There's no one in front of me. When there's going to be 263 new homes, let's double that for amount of cars on average. It's over 500 cars. If a third of them go out the other two ways, that still leaves 150, 200 cars. We might all be going out within the same 10 minutes, not all of us, but it could be backed up 5 cars, 10 cars. People may not even be able to turn into the subdivisions because the cars are backed up there. So I think it's going to be a big factor. And as long as we're trying to do what we can to do it, is it a 4-way stop? I think it is, because when the 4-way stop went in on Elm, it made it worse for us to get out because it spaced out all the cars where you couldn't, without looking both ways and gunning it, to get across. It made it worse with that 4-way. Will it make it better with ours? Yes, because those people have to stop. And then we have a chance to go. But I do feel, let's say when this subdivision is completed, there'll be a backup of 10 cars at the peak times. Not for the whole 2 hours from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m., but it'll be backed up. Even if I said at the Planning Commission, it would be faster for me to go out to Ivy, take a left on Fur to head west.
and other people will come to that same conclusion, I'm sure, so. Okay. I was just curious as to what your thinking was on how that intersection should be managed.
The other concerns we had at the first meeting was that the walking path was going to cut through our properties, because both of us own down over the urban growth boundary. And this is a solution that the walking path is still connected and goes around the streets. So it does complete the walking path. Other concern might be in the future of people spending the night on the walking path.
Urban campers?
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
So then what happens there, but that's something to see in the future.
Any questions? No. Thank you. Is it Mary Newman? Matt, I'm sorry. Matt, you're up.
I'm Matt.
Oh, Okay. Mr. Robert Price.
I'm here on behalf of Hope Village, and I'm going to let Craig Gingrich, the Executive Director at Hope Village, make the comments.
Okay.
Two of us.
Extra time for you, Mr. Gingrich. So if you could state your name and address.
Craig Gingrich, and we're at 1535 South Ivy. I'm here representing Hope Village, the board at Hope Village. And, you know, Hope Village currently has a long waiting list, been very successful with senior housing thanks to a good working relationship with the city of Canby. And as infrastructure continues to move south, we want to be part of that. So we have a vested interest in being supportive of the plan, and so I would be willing to answer any questions that anybody might have.
Any questions? I do have one. Do you feel like, because we have a letter here from Tom and Julie Rushton, they are residents of Hope Village, and they didn't feel like they received enough notice for their public hearing. Do you feel, outside of Mr. and Mrs. Rushton, that the residents of Hope Village, in your view, got enough notice for the public hearings?
We've heard no concerns in that regard. We have a publication that we put out called The Eagle, and so we've given a general notice in that Eagle of the activities, and I haven't heard any comments.
Any further questions? No. Okay, thank you. Susan Gallagher? You are in opposition, as as stated here.
Well, kind of, sort of.
Kind of, sort of.
I grew up on the property. Can I show you where I live? So, I live on my father's property. He's 93. And if this is the Malala River and the bridge comes here, we own to the top of the bluff at this first part. The top of the hill, down to the river, and then as you drive across the bridge, the whole farm that's there along with the trees.
No.
Lovely property. Great place to raise kids. When I moved back onto the property in 1991, we had a pretty bad problem with trespassers, vandalism, garbage, drugs, knives, needles, camping, drunkenness, and wild parties. So the summer before we moved back, they had a party where they had police from 7 different agencies come to clean that up. So putting that in perspective, that's not my first concern. My first concern is traffic. Right now, the state recently increased the speed limit there coming out by Hope Village from 40 to 50 miles an hour. And as someone who exits our driveway onto 170, that is a baffling change. There are also people at the top of that property. There's what we call the River Road that parallels the river down there, and there are some people not on our property, but farther down they have to exit right at the top of the bridge. And then there are people, of course, down in the valley also that exit their driveways onto 170. I can tell you that one summer, a couple summers ago, we lost 5 telephone poles as people took them out. So when we talk about the danger here, you know, that's pretty dramatic. So we're going to increase the traffic there, and at this point, 50 miles an hour. I think that the traffic circle is a wonderful idea. You cannot see it from the bridge. You will have to go up to the bridge and to the top of the hill before you see that. I don't know if that's here nor there, but it's just a clarification. So with the with the sewer treatment plant and the side road and tenants coming up, more traffic is just going to make it more dangerous. And what I heard at the last meeting with City Council was they didn't really see that traffic circle being built because it's going to be very expensive. And certainly it won't be down the line, it will be down the line even if it does happen. So there's going to be some issues. Then secondly, the sewer pumping station really concerns me, and it was addressed at City Council, just that they're putting in a redundant system and it should be fine. Well, I hope somebody looks more closely at that, because if that system doesn't work, we're going to have sewage in the river. And I think that's going to be a pretty bad situation. In addition, we have a gate, which we installed at our expense to stop people from going down that side road. And we've not been advised at all about the location of that pumping station and whether it would render that gate just in the wrong spot. Then the last issue is the green space issue, the parks issue. We felt for a long time that we're a default county park because people park there at the bridge and go down onto our property. The city attorney made the comment to me that I should just call the police. On any given weekend in the summer, there are probably 15 to 20 cars there all weekend. We have called the sheriff in the past. I cannot call the sheriff 15 to 20 times over the course of a weekend and ask them to ask people to leave. This is not like I can look out my back kitchen window and see somebody walking across my property. My house isn't even close to this area. I would have to physically be there, and I don't think any county sheriff is going to station themselves there to police this property. And so once we have 263 houses up there, with or without parks, because the city council commented that they did not have money to develop those parks, and maybe it wasn't appropriate to set aside land that would not be developed. So we may or may not have parks there. If we don't, that means those people will be looking for green spaces. If you have a tiny yard, you have kids, you have a dog, you're gonna look for a place to go. And the river is beautiful. My dad insisted that we never entirely kick people out of that spot because he said it's beautiful. People should be able to get down there. Unfortunately, as time has gone on, we did recapture and make it a safe place. We told people no dogs, no alcohol. We want this to be a family place. I do not feel comfortable telling people that anymore. I don't go down there anymore because of gangs. You just can't confront people anymore and tell them they're trespassing, would they please leave? And it's really not realistic to expect the county sheriff to do. So you've got an area that's not policed, there's no facilities, and now we're talking about putting a lot of houses with or with not park adjacent. So what I would love to see is, I think the walkway is a wonderful idea, but I'd like a 20-foot fence with razor wire there. That's not going to happen, but at least a substantial fence so that people won't climb down that hill to the river or dump their garbage down that hill to the river. And anytime we found you make it a little bit harder for people to trespass, you reduce the number of trespassers, you reduce the number of people who are going to be a nuisance. So that's really my comment, is that the traffic is an issue. I'm concerned about the sewage, and I really am concerned about being a default park for the county and for the city. So thank you very much, gentlemen.
Do you have any questions? I feel your pain, so thank you. Have David Peter, is that correct? State your name and address, please.
My name's David Peter. I live at 25130 South Highway 170 in Canby 97013. So I just would like to thank you for the opportunity as someone who lives in this area to be able to comment. And I am very impressed about the fact that there is a venue to talk about new development. And it's the first time I've been involved with that type of venue before, but I can tell that everybody's taking seriously the details, and I appreciate that. So that being said, I would like to also strongly affirm what Susan just said, because she's my neighbor on the other side of Highway 170. I live directly adjacent to the Molalla River. Exactly my driveway as you're heading south is just the first driveway that I have to turn left into after I get to the other side of the bridge. So her property's on one side of Highway 170, mine's on the other. Both of our properties are directly on the Molalla River, about a quarter mile of riverfront on each property. So I have been working in Canby and live 2.5 miles from my workplace since 2009, and I've been living in Canby on that property since March 2010. And I love the city of Canby. I've enjoyed the small town feel of Canby, and so I wanted to still feel that way over time. My main concerns are reiterating that certainly that the developers, Stafford Land Company, at our very first meeting in April 2017 mentioned that they really didn't need to think about parks because Canby doesn't have enough money to maintain them. And that was the only comment that I was a little bit flustered by, because Canby does have a lot of parks and they do maintain them pretty well. But for a developer, even before they get the plan started, to say that they really don't care about parks right from the onset because they know that Canby won't have enough money to maintain them was a little bit surprising to me. I see that they have, tried to get some parks into the development, and that's a good effort, and maybe those can be incorporated somehow. My main concern is that I have designated 23.25 acres out of my 24.25 acre property. All but 1 acre is designated as wildlife management property under Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. So it is a wildlife conservation and management property, except for 1 acre that's directly around our house. That was sanctioned and approved by ODFW. It is somewhat of a tax designation, but it does allow me to do restoration work, which I've done from the day I started on that property. My goals for the property is to, and have been worked on very hard, is to build the riparian forest next to the river to reduce erosion, improve the ecosystem, and I'm currently working on a second project over these past 8 years that hopefully will be approved by national conservation money to do oak savanna, and I've already got 104 oaks on the property. So this is a unique ecosystem that I have no intention of selling to any other individual. I have an intention for preserving it as an ecological wildlife management area, and it's already shown significant promise for attracting any number of mammals, as well as many number of bird species, which I had to designate to be able to get that designation to show that it had potential. Those can be threatened by enough people. People do threaten the stability of an ecosystem. It's a small ecosystem, being only 24 acres as opposed to 2,000 acres like some that you can find in many places in Oregon. But it is something that I do want to preserve. Will trespassers damage it? Yes, they will. Certainly at early stages of me planting 6 to 12-inch trees, people tromping over the land to get to their favorite part of the river instead of just going directly along the bridge easement certainly did cause a lot of damage in the beginning. But my main concern is that I want to keep the ecosystem good. And if we have a sewage system that is not well designated, if that does overflow, or if that does fail, or if a car happens to careen as they're accelerating around the bridge and hit that area, even if they don't damage the whole thing, but they throw it off enough for it to fail, then that water, because the bridge is slanted on that curve, the water goes directly down to a drain that empties into a pipe that goes directly onto my property and easily would go into the river. As everybody knows with flooding, which both Susan and I and anybody that lives near the Pudding or Molalla rivers, water goes where it's can go easily. So that sewage water will end up in the river, right at our property or at Susan's property, or both, or down that river road and further down river if there's enough water. And that's, you know, they did fish surveys in the river to show that it is a very positive river for steelhead, as well as coho and Chinook salmon. Steelhead predominantly, but still those species are actively being preserved by river advocacy groups, including what we pay our taxes for through Clackamas County Soil and Water Conservation. So I want to preserve the river. I think that is an ecosystem that will enhance the whole area, just simply because it's improving the quality of the water and cold water refuges for the fish. And we have active beaver on our property that are enhancing the ecosystem as it is. So the sewage system needs to be answered. I don't think this development is possible without that question being answered in terms of the potential for backup systems to fail and to actually strongly consider whether traffic could take it out. Because there's a lot of big trucks that come through that area. It could be even a construction truck that could take it out if somebody hits it the right way. So that, the sewage system is probably my biggest concern. So that's some of the logistics. I do want to stop for a second, and I know it's very easy to get caught up in details. The traffic problem is huge, and Susan made a very good explanation of that. And we're used to at least 2 or 3 power outages because people hit telephone poles every summer. And we're used to people lining up along the road so we could barely get in and out of our driveways. But the character of Canby may be changing, and I do have friends that live in Hillsborough and Beaverton, and I've lived in Oregon for 25 years. If you take a large community, it's not just a bunch of houses. A community is an area where people can gather and get to know their neighbors. People can safely get to their work, to school, and to have recreation within the boundaries of their community. I don't think these needs are fully met by the plan. It's too dense of a property. You're taking properties that enjoyed a lot of open space, and you're making, you're eliminating that open space. If I was a child, if my child wanted to ride a bike, if somebody who likes to be out in the open air and close to the river and buys a house in this property, they might want their kid to ride to school on their bike. Are they going to let them ride on Ivy Street? Are they going to let them ride on First Street? I don't know. But I don't even know if it's safe for any of those people's children to go on those streets. And that's not part of a traffic program. That's part of thinking about an entire community. So I think we need to step back and think, what do we want for the entire community? Does the livability justify this high of a density? I appreciate that you have smaller homes and bigger lots, and it's nice to have that type of diversity, but does it need to be as dense? And do we need to have the risk of polluting the environment that we are telling people to come to or be near by having too much density? So those are my thoughts, and any questions I'd be glad to answer.
Any questions for Mr. Peter?
I have a question for Brian. The pump station, aren't they underground?
I'm not a pump station expert, so I'm not a civil engineer, but Yeah, there's a
And they put-
lot of factors that go into how deep the force main may be and those kind of things. It's all based upon how the pipes that come to it and what depth they're going to be at to get the proper grade and flow to the pump station to begin with.
Well, there's one on 13th down there by Milano Road now, right?
Right, they've just built the brand-new one at that
And
location.
I've been by it, I haven't seen anything sticking up out of the ground.
No, I mean, it's way down in the ground
I
there.
presume this one, there would be nothing exposed for traffic to run over and,
Well, there's always the pump house that's above it, but I don't even know what's in them, so don't ask me.
I might be able to help answer that question as I design pump stations for a living.
okay, good,
There we go.
all right.
Even if it is not much overground, you know, besides that pump station house, that water is going to go somewhere. If it's underground, it will eventually seep down to the river. You're on a slope, and we know what happens with water on slopes. Eventually, if you've got that many gallons of sewage water, it will go somewhere.
Andre?
Yeah, the pump station consists of a raw water wet well that's underground with pumps housed typically in the wet well underground, which then is pumped upwards towards the force main. There's typically control panels above ground that control the pumps. The rest of the pump station is typically underground.
Any more questions for the gentleman? Thank you very much. Yeah. Finally, we have Roger Steinke.
I helped him, Roger.
Yeah, I got coached. Name and address, please.
Roger Steinke. My family joke is Stinky's easier to say. If you want to do that, please feel free. I won't be insulted. 1547 South First Street, Canby, Oregon, 97013. Two things. First, I want to thank you for the time that you spend serving our community. Secondly, if I forget to breathe at some point, please remind me. So I was at the meeting Wednesday, the city council meeting last Wednesday. So there was some discussion about the development. This picture was not there. Commissioner Smith spent a lot of time talking about future rights of property owners that are not involved with this development. I'm not. I'm annexing, but I've made no commitment. I've signed no contract with Mr. Root and Stafford Development. So that's fine. I just wanted to annex. Been to the meetings. I was at the one several weeks ago, and Mr. Smith's concern, or Commissioner Smith's concern, was about people who wanted to develop in the future that they would be able to still do what's best with them. I think there was a lot of discussion about thinking this might be 20 years from now. Well, Cheryl and I have lived in our house for 30 years, raised our children here, grandchildren, spend all of our Christmas holidays at our house, 20 family members. There's going to be a point that maybe Cheryl and I want to move sooner rather than later. So I think Commissioner Smith's concern, which I valued greatly, was about people who want to move and about being tied into an absolute specific plan. So Brian, I know, has always been concerned about the landowner that wants to try and get one more lot. And I respect that because I'm not that person. So, but meeting with Mr. Root, there's one plan that he showed me that still has more development on my property that hasn't been seen. So I'm meeting with him Wednesday on to talk to him about that. So what my concern is, for many years, it's like, what do I want to maybe do, or who I want to sell my property to? Because for over 25 years, at times I have gotten Christmas cards from Hope Village saying, wish your family a happy Christmas. And if you're ever interested in selling, give us a call. So, I pointed out that if we chose to want to sell to Hope Village, which, it has a very nice 2-acre development just on the other side of the Wenwick property, they're not an option from what I can see because of this development plan. And it would also be a choice possibly what Cheryl and I would want to do. It's not a commitment. It's just something that we would want to do. So I'm concerned. All I wanted to do is annex. It seems like people have not been involved with any of the development plans. I am concerned about my property rights and wanting to sell in the future. And I hadn't spoken before at the other planning commission meetings because I never felt the need that I needed to, because all I wanted to do was annex. I wanted to have it done with so I wouldn't have to worry about it another time. That's all I have to say.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming and speaking your mind. Do we have any questions for the gentleman?
I have one. What about the road in your property?
Which one?
Well, I think it's,
13th Street?
no, it's F Street. Does that go down into your property?
15th.
15th?
15th Street. So I brought this up at the city council meeting last week. I believe this shows that the lots are are the 5,000 square foot lots?
On this particular plan map, the lots are shown as 5,000
Okay.
because that's the only thing that can be done with the underlying zoning that will be assigned unless they get a conditional use permit when they bring in a subdivision.
Okay, so you had mentioned, you had drawn in, and you said it earlier tonight that you talked about 3,000 square foot lots for townhouses. Okay, so I believe I saw a picture, a plan of that on my property with Mr. Root, and it's one reason I want to meet with him on Wednesday night, because I believe that conceivably if you went maximum development on my property of the 2 acres, I believe that 15th Street on my property very possibly wouldn't be there. Okay. So I'm just saying, is the way you have it drawn there, that would possibly affect the way my property could be developed in the future.
So let me just kind of clear up again, as I did at the council meeting. The streets are fairly important as shown on the concept plan, but it's still a concept. So if they can be slightly maneuvered, bent, shortened, and still serve all property owners and with reasonable development possibilities, they can be altered when a subdivision is brought in. And as the note on this plan the council passed said, the property lots, the lot sizes and the property lines, the applicants, the property owners are not held to. So any new configuration of the lots is possible that wouldn't necessarily conform to what we find here. There may be a totally different number of lots that end up on the actual subdivisions that get proposed. It's likely that it'll be similar, but if they want to propose and can get the Planning Commission to approve a different design with different lot numbers or configurations, that will be fine as long as the streets are still connecting in similar locations so that we still have diverse directions to go and that they're still serving any of the other tax lots that haven't annexed yet, then alterations can be made.
Yes, I'm saying, as Commissioner Smith very greatly appreciated, was still concerned about, my property was the vague property that everyone was talking about. Because after the meeting last week, pretty much everyone in the neighborhood thought that I was participating in the development. And they were pretty surprised to hear that I just was annexing. So it's generally a little buzz in the neighborhood. So I felt that this was drawn up with anticipation that I would be participating. And I said, my concern is for myself, my wife, my family down the future, and having some options in this. So I'm going to put my foot in my mouth or something and don't want to ramble. Thank you for your time. And again, appreciate all you do for our community.
Okay, those were all the blue slips that I received. But is there anybody out there that would want to give everybody an opportunity to speak if you want to? I see somebody back there in the far corner. If you'll step forward, state your name and address, and whether you're pro, con, or neutral. So I don't have that information here.
Yes, my name is Julie Rushton, and I live in Hope Village, 1441 South Ivy Street. I'm just responding to your question to Craig about the notification to residents in Hope Village. And I can say without a doubt, there isn't anyone that I've come across yet in the many people that I know in Hope Village that was notified with the public notice that was sent out to other property owners in the surrounding area. So I wanted to clarify that. We have asked many times to be included in notifications. My husband and I came to the planning department twice and asked about what was happening in the area, once in May last year, once in probably late October, and we're told that there wasn't any information to be given to us at that time. So we've made every effort to try to be included in the process, and we have not been, so I'd like to clarify that. He referred to our publication, The Eagle. To my knowledge, there was never any notification in The Eagle. If there was, I would like to know when that was done. And we have been talking with residents in the community in the last couple of weeks, and I've probably talked to in excess of 20 different people, both in Hope Village, the residence home, and in the rental, and I have yet to find anyone that received a copy of that public notice. Thank you.
Any questions? No. Thank you. Okay, do you have any rebuttal? Name and address again, please.
Tucker Mayberry, 10801 Southwest Riverside Drive, Portland, Oregon, 97219. I know we're not here talking about the actual subdivision application. We're talking about the annexation. But I just wanted to talk about the parks just a little bit. We really like parks. And so I think, we'll be working with Brian and other city officials on how can, if we're going to dedicate land for parks, how can we actually get them built? And I think I have some ideas on how that might be accomplished. And then as far as making them such that they can be, that trail could be designed in a way to discourage anybody from trespassing on the neighbor's property, I think we can do, take some measures to make that hopefully not happen, or at least limit it. And so anyway, I just wanted to mention that.
Oh, I appreciate your mentioning that, because I would encourage you to get together with, sorry, I'm going to look through the notes here, with Mr. Peter and Ms. Gallagher. You're not, as I recall, based upon what I'm seeing here, you're not exactly inside the city limits, is that correct? Correct. Okay, but I would encourage you as good neighbors to get together with those folks and work with them on mitigating the impact of having urban campers on their property as best you can.
We don't want that either. That's bad for all of us.
No, it doesn't do any good for your property values either. So there you are. Any questions, any further questions? Okay. Thank you very much. Any other testimony that has not been given? Okay. Yes. Sure. Like to hear every voice.
I just
offer a clarification. I want to be honest. And
Oh, that's good. That's
yeah,
always a good
and-
policy.
And so our notification of our residents has been a general discussion that we're interested in acquiring property because the property around us is being developed. So we let that be known to the resident. If notification is part of our requirement that we note as an owner, we let our lessees know we did not do that. So I guess I just want to be clear, and I guess I would ask that as a question. Is that a requirement that we do that as owners?
I don't think so, but
So I just wanted to be clear for the record. So, any
ready?
question about that?
Thank you. If there's no more testimony, I will close the public testimony. And are there any questions that you might have for Brian or amongst ourselves? Would you like to have any discussion before we move on to making a proposal? Okay.
I have something to say.
Okay, good.
This is, for some of the people out there, this is an annexation, a concept plan. This is not the development plans, I guess, right? So I would encourage you, if you have any problems or with what you think the development is going to do, like where the streets are going to run or whatever, to definitely talk to the contractor or the developer developing the project, because we will have to go through that again. So, and then whether we approve it or disapprove it, the city council's the final decision in it. Anyway, that's all I have to say.
Sean?
Yeah, I was just going to kind of clarify that a little bit as well, and just make sure that we hear from Brian. The concept plan, as you mentioned, is just a concept. If Mr. Steinke wants to sell his property to Hope Village, he's welcome to do so, correct? This doesn't tell him who he can sell it to or how they can develop it, correct?
Now, again, the only criteria that has to be taken in account, though, is that there's an overall water and sewer plan to serve the property and street circulation plan. So if someone else buys it for a different purpose than what they're currently thinking, which is kind of identified by the lots that they've shown, then again, we can vary the lot size, the number of lots, and even change some of the local streets some. But there's a limit to our ability to do that, because it might thwart the ability of the water line and the sewer line to work and those kind of things. And so all of that has to be looked at, but it's not, again, it's concept. And so usually you can change those things and re-engineer them without adversely impacting any single property's developability.
And so any changes to that would be the burden of whoever purchased his property in the
That's
future.
right.
I just want to make sure the Steinkes go home tonight comfortable that their choices,
They
that
can
they
come
can make
back
whatever choice they want to on their
and try
property.
to make a minor modification to the approved concept plan, and so it can be evaluated if it will still work if we do this instead of this.
Thank you.
And we'll be doing that when a subdivision by the applicant is submitted as well.
Well, and I just want to confirm, we're not actually voting on the concept plan tonight.
Tonight, you
All
don't.
we're doing is the annexation and the
Right.
zoning. This plan means nothing to us this evening. That's already been approved as it sits.
That would be my assumption, since the council's already acted on it.
They listened to us then.
In regard to the intersection at 13th and Fur, I've attended the last two Traffic Safety Council meetings here in Canby, and I brought that up at both meetings, and we discussed it at length, and they are cognizant of the issues there, that it's a problem now and it's going to get worse, so there will be action taken. I don't know if it'll be stop signs, street lights, who knows, but it is in the works.
Any other comments? Okay. Let's move ahead and make a decision then. Anybody like to step forward and,
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we approve Mayberry Group annexation and zone change ANN 17-01/ZC17-04.
I second.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we're good. So we will make a final decision then on the same thing. So I need a second motion for a final decision.
Mr. Chair, I move that we accept the final decisions on ANN 17-01/ZC 17-04 Mayberry Group.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. Brian, any items of interest or report from the staff?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
Yeah, it might be worthwhile. We had 2 points. I put the slide up here again when you made your motion to have mentioned what the zoning also would become on the properties. I mean, it's fairly obvious, I guess, but it wasn't included in your motion for approval. I'm not an attorney. I don't know whether it causes
Well,
a problem or not.
let's do a little CYA. Yeah, so go right ahead.
What did I do wrong?
No, you didn't do anything wrong, and we're not your wife, so.
Amend the motion to include the recommendations from city staff.
Okay. I amend the motion to approve the Mayberry Group annexation and zone change, ANN 17-01/ZC 17-04 to include the recommendations from staff.
I second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
We need to redo the final.
So we're going to have our next meeting will be the 26th, correct? No? Laney says no, so,
At this point, I will have to notify you. I don't know if there's something on it or not.
so TBA.
To be determined.
So any items of interest from us to the staff? Okay. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? There we are. We're adjourned. Thank you very much.